Hello, everyone. I'm Megan Selmer. I'm the Outreach Coordinator at the National Network for Equitable Library Service, also known as NNELS. Thank you so much for joining me today for the NNELS demographic webinar focusing on children and teen with print disabilities. This is the last webinar of the series. Um, Library staff, of course, just assist diverse groups of people, including those with print disabilities, in accessing reading materials that meets their needs and preferences. This webinar will build upon the reference and readers advisory interview focused on determining which resources can support children and teens with print disabilities in their library, as well as you as library staff and their parents. So I'm not going to be able to cover the extensive reading requirements of everyone in this group today, of course, but I'm here to help if you have any questions either at the end of this webinar or you can get in touch with support at nels.ca, and I love to answer questions. So I'm going to begin with a land acknowledgement. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that I live, work, and play on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Sililic, Okanagan, the Nlakapam, the Cayuse, the Umatilla, and Walla Walla peoples. If you would like to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge where you live, work, and play, please do so now. Thank you. All right. So next up, what we're going to cover today, I'm going to have a very brief overview of the demographic webinar series and the two webinars that were before. I have some statistics on teens and children with print disabilities in Canada that I'd like to talk about. I also will briefly cover alternate format providers and education and how those two groups kind of coexist. And then we'll dive into the personas and scenarios. We have 4 personas and scenarios today, with a lot of resources to cover. And finally, hopefully we'll have time for a questions and discussion at the end. And I would love to hear all your thoughts on the webinar. So a brief overview of the demographic webinar. The first one was on seniors with print disabilities. This covered 3 personas and scenarios that presented different ways to help seniors new to print disabilities with varying technology skills. So we had someone with no technology skills. We had someone with very limited technology, not very, just limited technology experience, and someone willing to learn assistive technologies and new technologies if that gets them. So we also, the second webinar was for adults with print disabilities. And here we really went through 4 personas and scenarios to present different resources on the different print disabilities in adults and people who had established print disabilities, as well as someone who maybe didn't know that they had a print disability. So we had someone with a temporary print disability. He had a broken arm in that persona. We had someone with a learning print disability. We had someone who had been blind since birth. And then someone who had a mobility print disability. So really to kind of cover all the categories or all the different types of print disabilities that exist in broader categories. So now let's talk about statistics and teens and children with print disabilities in Canada. They're, especially for children, it's a little hard to pinned down, but we found some from StatCan. So the statistics we have are derived from 2 studies. The first is the update on the profile of children with affirmative responses to the 2021 census questions on difficulties with activities of daily living. And that found that 16.3% of children aged 0 to 14 had affirmative responses to questions about activity limitations. I do want to know this was parents responding on behalf of their children. So in that survey, of the 16.3% of children, their parents responded on their behalf. The affirmative responses are also, there was 3 options they could choose from to be affirmative and be part of that 16.3%. So there was yes always, yes often, and yes sometimes. So while this isn't as, say, concrete as the next survey, there was still, it's still something that we can really use to determine how many children with print disabilities, or disabilities in this case, are in Canada. So of the 16.3%, 3% had the activity limitation of seeing. 1.6% had the activity limitation of mobility, flexibility, or dexterity. And 9.9% had the activity limitation of learning, remembering, or concentrating, which are all if they're all considered a print disability. The next, for the age 15 to 24, which is what they said were youth in the StatsCan survey, we have the Canadian Survey on Disabilities, the 2017 to 2022. And that found that 20% of youth age 15 to 24 stated they had a disability. And of that 20%, the types of disabilities that they noted included, so 39.2% noted they had a mobility disability, 27.4% noted they had a seeing disability, 20%, 0.7% stated they had a learning disability. And then you get into like different types of mobility. So 18.4% said they had dexterity disabilities. 18.2% said they have a memory disability, and 5.7% said they had a developmental disability. So of course, not all of those would be a print disability, but it's a good place to start trying to figure out how many people have a print disability in Canada that are of that age, 0 to 24 in this case. So quite a few, 16 to 20%. Okay, so next up we have the alternate format providers and education. So I think this is an important topic to cover just because there are two separate organizations that provide alternate formats to these two demographics, children and teens. NNELS and other Canadian alternate format providers like CELA, like BNQ, assist libraries in giving children and teens access to accessible books they want to read for enjoyment. So we provide what they want to read through you for enjoyment. Provincial organizations offer accessible formats of textbooks and required reading that children and teens need for school environments. So we would never make an accessible textbook, for example. And by we, I mean NNELS. So just if you are more interested in the provincial organizations that offer accessible formats, the Canadian Association of Educational Resource Centers for Alternate Format Materials has a list of its members across Canada. And I have the URL there. I do also have the full list of resources covered today in a document that I will send out at the end of this presentation. So don't worry about trying to get those URLs down. And I just also want to really take a moment to please note that libraries cannot borrow books for their patrons from the provincial government's alternate format providers. Individuals must request the books, so the students or the students' parents must request the books they need in accessible formats through their schools. And that's how they get those accessible books or textbooks and required reading. All right. So let's talk about the personas and scenarios we have for you today. We have 4 representing potential library patrons you may encounter. I've suggested some resources that might be helpful to you or the patron or the patron's parents that you could provide when providing services. So first up, we have Emma Douglas. Emma is a 6-year-old girl with dyslexia. She struggles to decode words and has difficulty reading traditional print books. She loves stories, but feels frustrated by books that are hard to read for her. I do want to briefly note that we will provide images as requested after the first webinar, and I'm going to take this opportunity to describe the image aloud, as that is best practice when giving a presentation, or as we'll talk about a little bit later, story time. So that everyone has the same experience of the webinar. So on the right side of the slide is a young girl with dark skin who smiles at the camera. She has brown eyes and a long brown hair styled in multiple small braids. She wears a white t-shirt and silver earrings while sitting in front of a tree with large, dark pink flowers. All right, so let's talk about Emma's scenario. Emma and her parents visit the library to ask which book formats would be easier for her to read. She really wants to join the summer reading club with her best friend, Alicia. Are any of those books available in a format that would make reading easier for Emma? And here are the questions you could ask, some of the questions you could ask Emma. So some kids find it easier to read when the words are bigger or read aloud. what makes reading easier for you. And then if she doesn't know, or if she has some idea, you could talk about, like, have you read decodable books? These are books that have words that are easy to sound out or decode to help you read. Have you read audiobooks before? Audiobooks are books that read the story aloud to you. And I just really want to emphasize that audiobooks are books. Are you interested in learning more about what you can play audiobooks on? You can read audiobooks on many different devices, including dedicated audio players available for loan at the library. And then just to help find out what she also wants to read in those formats, like, what are you interested in reading? Do you want to join the summer reading club? Items like that. So here's the recap from Emma's scenario and questions. So Emma really wants to try reading both decodable books and audiobooks. She thinks it's so cool that the library has books to help her read, and she can also listen to them. If listening to audiobooks is fun, she's totally going to join the summer reading club with Alicia. So here's some resources to help support Emma in this scenario. So the first ones we have is resources for children with dyslexia to support both Emma and her parents. Dyslexia Canada provides information and resources that allow children and their caregivers to connect, share experiences, and develop tools and strategies with other children with dyslexia and their parents. So that's a really great resource. We have Reading Rocket, which, as they put it, is a public media literacy initiative that provides information and resources on how young children learn to read and how adults can help them. For library staff, it has like book lists. It has a really great glossary if you ever want to look up a term. And there is a toolkit for librarians on Reading Rocket if you're interested. It's a little old, but a lot of the information is still great. And then we have Made by Dyslexia to support Emma and her parents. This is a charity created by people with dyslexia. It offers information specifically tailored to kids with dyslexia and parents of children with dyslexia. So it includes videos about thriving with dyslexia, the struggles that they may encounter and how they overcome them, information on the strengths of children with dyslexia, and they commonly have, and things like that. It's got some really great resources as well for libraries. We can also provide information on accessible formats like audiobooks and decodable books. So we have the NNELS understanding formats. This just goes through each format we provide and why it's accessible and how we produce them. We have the NNELS YouTube DAISY demonstration, which we will watch in just a few moments, and that will go through and exactly what the NNELS DAISY format is like. Also, we have the same kind of demonstration for MP3s. There's a great resource from CELA on all about reading disabilities and how libraries can support readers with dyslexia. And that's a good option to support Emma and her parents. We also have information on the reading systems that Emma can use to read the accessible formats. So we have the NNELS reading system recommendation. This is a really good list that lets you select the operating system of the device you are using and then lists your available reading systems you can use with it. So from that, you can also note, like, this reading system is what the price is, what features it has, and what formats it supports. So for example, in Emma's case, say she wants to listen to audiobooks on her family computer. She selects Windows, while Easy Reader from Dolphin is a really great option for Emma and her parents, as it plays both DAISY formats and has a read aloud feature for EPUBs. We also have like the recommendation of the Libby app, which has decodable books and audiobooks available for loan. And so NNELS quite frequently tests the accessibility of reading systems to determine how accessible they are for library patrons. The Libby accessibility testing report was in 2022. So that was a few years ago, but we found that they had made really great strides in making its app and website really accessible for screen readers. However, testers with low vision did have some issues with the small font on navigation controls and visual adjustment settings in iOS. So that's something that you may want to consider. I mean, if you're ever recommending Libby to people with low vision who use an Apple iPhone, for example. And then we also have Tumble Books. So Tumble Books provides access to children's stories in various formats, including audiobooks, graphic novels, read-alongs, and videos. It's a really popular, well, it's a reading system often provided by libraries. I do want to note that we tested this in 2024. And so for Emma, it might be a great resource, but for people with low vision and who use a screen reader, we did find significant accessibility barriers, including the structure and labeling issues. And that's not to say not to use it. I just think that that's what this resources webinar is all about, right? Is providing you the information that exists about the accessibility of items you might use. And so next up, we have information on the specialized devices you can use to read accessible formats. So she doesn't want to use her own device or computer. Emma these are some options to find specialized devices from your library or, yeah. So we have the Playaway and Wonderbook players, which libraries can purchase devices and preloaded with audiobooks, which are Playaways, or print books with ready-to-read audiobooks inside, which are Wonderbooks. And kids can press play to read along with their favorite books. This is really two great options. And then we have Humanware and Canadian Assistive Technology. And these are companies where you can purchase items like Daisy players, like a Victor Stream Reader. I will note that everything is quite expensive. It's just, yeah, like that's the world we live in. So those are all expensive options. I understand that libraries often can't afford these kind of items, but I just thought it would be remiss not to provide specialized devices. Okay, and then finally, the last resources to support Emma are the reading clubs. So NNELS provides reading clubs. We have the BC Summer Reading Club and the TD Summer Reading Club for like the last 5 to 7 years, all in accessible formats. And you can, if the format's not, say, in an audiobook, it's only in an EPUB, you can request you can request that title in the audiobook format, and we will get to making it for you or purchasing it. And then CELA also has the summer reading clubs in accessible formats. All right, let's do a demonstration of the NNELS Daisy audiobook player by Letitia.
Hi, my name is Letitia. I am an accessibility tester at NNELS. I love reading books from NNELS library because the library offers books in multiple formats. One format I often use is DAISY. DAISY simply means Digital Accessibility Information System. This format gives me the same flexibility that readers of regular print enjoy, including navigation by sentences, chapters, sections, and pages. The DAISY format also allows me to either listen to or skip footnotes, sidebars, etc. NNELS DAISY files can be played on any DAISY-supported devices, such as Victor Reader's players, mobile devices, and computers. To get a book onto a device, I simply download the file into the app or computer. Then I play it. Now, let's see how simple it can be to play a DAISY file.
I'll underline the underline.
So here I have a book that I just downloaded from the library, and I'm going to play a random sample.
Enter. Type. Enter. Explorer pane. Unovic 9789. Enter. Underline 9780. Enter. Media player. Pause button.
Prologue. A new door. Midway through the 20th century, two unusual new molecules, organic compounds with a striking family resemblance, exploded upon the West. In time, they would change the course of social, political, and cultural history, as well as the personal histories of the millions of people.
Alt F4.
As you could see, it took me only 2 clicks to play the book. Open the folder, highlight the chapter that I want to listen to, press enter. It's that simple. Reading books in my chosen format enhances my reading experience. Thank you for watching.
Excellent. So next up, we have our next persona, which is Jake Martin. So Jake is an 8-year-old boy with a visual print disability. He is blind and reads Braille books or with a screen reader to access information. He enjoys hanging out with his friends, reading and playing games, but it's sometimes hard to find games that they can all play. So in Jake's, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the image description. So on the right side of the slide is a picture of a young boy with light and to medium skin tone and brown hair. His head is tilted down, concentrating as he reads with his finger. He is wearing a white, gray, and black striped shirt. There is a blurred green plant in the upper left corner in the background. So here's Jake's scenario. Jake struggles to find books in formats compatible with his screen reader, so he visits a library for the first time to find out what the experts suggest. And while at the library with his parents to ask what books he can read, he discovers that the library has games too. Maybe he can play some of them with his friends. So here are some questions you could ask Jake. So reading is different for everyone. How do you like to read? Did you know that you can access free books in Canada if you can't read print books? What types of books or stories do you like to read? Do you ever use Braille, audiobooks, or special technology to help you read? Do you like to read print Braille? Print Braille is Braille picture books. Do you like to read audiobooks? Do you have a favorite device or gadget that you like to read on? Do you use something like a screen reader to help you read? And then Jake might use more than one screen reader, so just ask, depending on the devices he has access to, like which one does he prefer? And then what games do you like to play with your friends? Here's a recap from Jake's scenario and question. So Jake enjoys reading everything and is excited to discover that he now has access to many books through his library. He reads print Braille, audiobooks, and anything else that works with his screen reader. He primarily uses VoiceOver on an iPhone, so that's where we can start. He's excited to discover that the library has accessible games and activities. He's already planning a game night with his friends. Here are the resources to support Jake. So first are resources for libraries and Jake's parents to learn about the available accessible reading options. So coming in, Jake has a print disability. So we have NNELS info for libraries training, and that helps you, kind of walks you through what a print disability is and how to register new users. We have a NNELS sample declaration form for libraries. If you don't have one, you can take that and use and modify as you wish. And we have using NNELS with a screen reader. These are a series of tutorials about how to explore NNELS with a screen reader, download, search NNELS. And I think this would be a really good option for both Jake and his parents to kind of get used to accessing NNELS for the books that are available to him. So the next list of resources is information on accessible formats and the reading systems you can use to read them. So we kind of covered audiobooks with Emma. So those are still applicable here. But now we have like the NNELS Print Braille collection. This is a really great collection of children's books, picture books, that contain the original text complete with printed words and illustration. And then there's a Braille version of the printed words, either as a leaflet between the pages or as a sticker over top of the text. Image descriptions in Braille, and it has a QR code. Our print Braille books have a QR code that contain the text of the book and the image descriptions in a digital format. We also have Braille at NNELS. So if he wants hard copy Braille, which is it would be like a book, like a chapter book in Braille. Here you can learn more about the Braille provided by NNELS and the libraries across Canada that host our hard copy Braille. This is our only physical format at NNELS. It's the hard copy Braille and the print Braille collection. And then we have the NNELS reading system recommendation again. So based on Jake's scenario, you would select iOS and find that Voice Stream Reader is an excellent option because it's compatible with EPUBs, MP3, and DAISY text. And it also has heading and chapter navigation to use with a screen reader, and it is screen reader compatible. So that is like so that's why you can use the NNELS reading system to really find something that would work with his screen reader on his device. So, and now let's talk about accessible games, which is always fun. So we have, NNELS has an accessible card and board game list, which just has options and where to find them, including accessibility kits for common board games to make them more accessible. In this list, I just want to highlight the 64-ounce game store is an option. This has items like Story or Catan or Clue, like really popular board games, and accessibility kits to make them accessible for everyone. We have Blind in Mind, the Braille Superstore. So this has tactile games such as chess or checkers. It also has Monopoly, which so for both blind and sighted people to use. A really good one if you want to do Lego is like Lego has audio and Braille building instructions for some of their sets, not all of their sets, and that's available at this URL here. And it just makes anyone with a print, it makes Lego accessible for anyone with a print disability. And then we have CNIB play and recreation products. It has items like accessible cards with Braille, tactile dice, and things like that, which are really helpful for games and card games. Okay, our next persona today is Chloe Davis. We're moving into the team portion. Chloe is a 15-year-old with a motor disability caused by a brain injury when she was younger. She enjoys reading, meeting new people, and participating in fun activities, especially at the library. So in Chloe's scenario, she goes to the library with her parents to find out what upcoming programs she can explore and join. Here are some questions you could ask Chloe. So what type of activities or programs do you enjoy the most at the library? For example, reading, crafts, games. If you have attended library program before, what did you like or dislike about them? Common questions, and then the next ones are more about, I don't love the word accommodation, but that's what these are kind of directed at. Is there anything we can do to make it easier for you to join in on our library programs? Do you use any specific equipment or technology? For example, screen readers or other assistive devices or other assistive technologies when accessing resources or programs? Is there anything we can do to improve the physical accessibility of our library space for you during these programs? Here is a recap from Chloe's scenario in question. Chloe is excited to join an online teen book club and a slime craft activity in a few weeks. She does need some support for the in-person activity, including accessible spaces and containing the materials in her work area. So here are the resources we suggest to support Chloe. The first one is about accessible library programming. And of course, this is a huge subject. But the first one I would suggest is Accessible Libraries has an accessible library programming learning path that has a lot of different options. Some of the resources here include how to create accessible like digital instructions, how to have an accessible presentation. So that's where, when I describe the images aloud, that's where that feature comes from. How to, like, it has a lot of really great resources, including some of the ones that we will talk about next, and that's external resources. So the first one is like CELA's Accessible Libraries Crafts and Activities. This is a PDF document with general tips to make your programming accessible, including space considerations and providing accessible instructions. So then you could use the Accessible Libraries checklist to make your instructions accessible and things like that. It also has like using a tray or something to help things to stop rolling away for people with mobility disabilities. So that would be for this scenario. The next one we have is Making Storytime More Accessible by the Provincial Resource Center for the Visually Impaired. So this is it's a really great short. It talks about how to make storytime accessible, for example, by also doing what I'm doing in this presentation, like describing the images aloud for the people who are attending. PRCVI, apologies, is also one of those educational organizations that provides alternate formats for textbooks and required reading. But in this case, we're just doing like the really great short that they have done. So we have more accessible library programming. So inclusion events guide. This is great for any like author. Like it's based on literary events, but you could take it for anyone who's visiting your library and talking to a group of children or teens. So it comes from both the perspective of the attendee and what they might need as support, and for the speaker. It also covers like hybrid, in-person and virtual events. It's really great. The Adaptive Umbrella blog shares resources on accessible library programming and services. It offers various programming guidelines, for example, sensory story time, and other ideas for creating an inclusive library programming. And then the last one, and this is particularly great for Chloe, is the 7 Principles of Universal Design. So this is a really good resource to remember when making your spaces, your services, your programming, communications accessible. It's a really high level guideline that kind of like makes you think about the overall. Like it's not, we really don't get into the particulars in this document, but it has things like consider whether your space is inclusive, meaning everyone can use it. And it just is like those high level thoughts that maybe you might not have thought about before. Or is your space flexible, meaning it can support a wide range of abilities. So next we have looking at accessibility tips for digital meeting software. So these are just like the Zoom's tips and hosting for more accessible meetings, the take advantage of accessibility features in Microsoft Teams for a better meeting or live event and experience, or screen reader support for Microsoft Teams, are just really 3 great resources to try, and just something to consider when you're having one of those virtual meetings, right? Like captioning, transcripts, are those like, have you made those available? Can those be available? Things like that. So for the book club, we just talked about the platform that the library might be using. Let's talk about the accessible formats in book clubs. So we've already talked about NNELS understanding formats, and the YouTube. We have the accessibility glossary of the NNELS content and website. So these are the demonstrations of our formats, and then CELA's accessible formats. But I think it's just really important to keep in mind that if you have a book club, if you just like just go for a search for NNELS and CELA, see if it's there in an accessible format to have in your back pocket if someone needs it. Also, if you do it far enough in advance, you can request the book at NNELS, and we will hopefully be able to get that in time for your book club or your patrons. And speaking of requesting a title, here is a demonstration on how to do that on our website.
Hi, my name is Deanna, and I'm an accessibility tester with NNELS. I enjoy reading books in different formats, especially when I go to a book launch and there's a new book that I really want, and then having the ability to request a title through NNELS just allows me the option to enjoy the same book as others. In this tutorial, I will be sharing how to request a title through the NNELS repository. So there are 2 ways to request a title for the NNELS repository. The first is if you search and you can't find a title, there is a link that would say request title link, and you can go to that. Or if you are logged in and on the main page, you may request books that are not available in the NNELS collection or that are not yet in your preferred format. And this is the link to the Make Request form on the main NNELS page. And there is a request a title form. We are going to enter a title and if there is an author, more information, the better. If you don't know the ISBN, no worries. As you see, any essential field will have a red asterisk beside it. There are different formats to choose from. This one is one that I enjoy, audio book MP3, human narration. and tell us about the device or software. So what will you play it on? And other information, this is just to be more specific. I will say audiobooks, human narration. And then this is if you want to enter your email so that someone can get back to you and ask you for more information, or if they want to let you know about the timeline or if it's available. And then there's a button to send request and it'll take you to a page if it's successful. Thank you for requesting a title.
Excellent. So that was Deanna's demonstration.
Hi.
All right, so our last persona today is Mateo Hernandez. Mateo is a 17-year-old with low vision who enjoys graphic novels but struggles with standard print formats. Depending on the day, he uses screen magnification software and/or a screen reader, and he needs large print materials or accessible digital versions of his graphic novels. Oh, I forgot to, apologies. So image description. On the right side of the screen is a picture of a young man with light to medium skin tone and dark hair pulled up into a bun, wearing large black headphones. He looks out of the frame with a thoughtful expression on his face. Sitting on a bench, he wears a yellow jacket and holds his phone in his hand, while the background features a blurred old building and trees. So here's Mateo's scenario. So Mateo loves reading graphic novels, but the ones he can buy in the store are way too small, and using a magnifying glass to read them is frustrating. His mom suggests going to the library to find some options, but he's unsure. Does the library even have graphic novels? Here are the questions you could ask Mateo in this scenario. So what do you enjoy reading? In what format do you read graphic novels? For example, physical books, ebooks, or audiobooks? What would your ideal graphic novel experience involve? What features would make it perfect for you? So for this question, it would likely be something like, if he prefers audiobooks, he would want image descriptions added to his graphic novel. What devices do you listen to or read graphic novels with? What assistive technologies help you read graphic novels? And of course, in this situation, you could just swap out graphic novels with any type of book and it would work for someone. Here's some more questions. So after learning that Mateo didn't know about all the fantastic resources available at your library, you could ask him about your marketing and communication strategies. I know outreach is a big part of libraries. I know sometimes that you don't reach the people you want to reach, and it's the same for now. So are there parts of the library's social media, like posts or images, that don't work well with your screen reader assistive technologies? I think trying to find out how accessible your marketing and communication strategies are to people with print disabilities is quite important. We did a study, the Accessible Libraries did a study a few years ago, is your public library accessible? And a large portion of, well, not teens, of the participants found that if the website or if the communications and marketing material were not accessible, they made significant assumptions about the accessibility of a library. And I think that's something that's really important to just consider when you're crafting your marketing materials. So here's the recap from Mateo's scenario and questions. So Mateo is interested in learning about reading graphic novels in ebook and audiobook formats on his Android tablet, and what graphic novels are available from alternate format providers and reading apps. He also talked about why he didn't follow his local library on social media. There were some accessibility barriers in their posts. Here are the resources that we provide to support Mateo. So the first one is NNELS has some great accessible graphic novels for your patrons who are interested in that. So the first option is just our genre. You click on that link, it's all the graphic novels, all the works that have been tagged with comic or graphic works in our collection. So Sela also has lots of graphic novels. I did a title search and that's what that link is there. So next we have NNELS described images demonstration, which you'll see at the end of this persona and scenario. And that's just really to learn more about how images are described and why that would be so important to a graphic novel. And then we have a really great article by CNIB about transforming graphic novels into accessible audiobooks that I would recommend. They talk about like how the description, the visual like image descriptions are interspersed with the text, and it's quite interesting. All right, so we covered these so many times. Let's do it one more time. So learning about the accessible and alternate formats that graphic novels are available in. So of course we have like the NNELS understanding formats, we have the CELA's accessible formats, and then we have the NNELS reading system recommendations. So for the last time, let's look at what Mateo's tech was to find the best reading system from this. So for example, Mateo had an Android tablet. So I would say from the list, the Easy Ready from Dolphin is a really good option for him because it's compatible with EPUBs and Daisy text and audio on Android, and it does read the image descriptions and is compatible with screen readers. All things Mateo needs to support and read graphic novels. So next up, we have accessible social media and marketing for libraries. We want everyone to be able to access all your amazing items and your marketing. So let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. So the first recommendation that I have is the Accessible Social Media and Marketing Learning Path by Accessible Libraries. This is a really good resource. So it has things like an overview of the accessibility of the different platforms themselves and how they're accessible. So for example, how accessible is Facebook? How accessible is Instagram, X, or TikTok? There's a checklist on creating accessible social media posts, and that covers topics like image descriptions, formatting hashtags. For example, if you don't capitalize the first letter of hashtags, screen readers try and decipher them, and they don't always do a very good job. Also, emojis is a really interesting one, and we'll talk about it a little bit when I get to Emojipedia, but each emoji comes with a description. Like they're all described. And what you use the description might differ from how you use emoji, and that's always an interesting one to check out. There's a resource on creating accessible documents and handouts to make sure those digital items are accessible. Ensuring your emails and newsletters are accessible is another option. And then this accessible social media and marketing learning path also has supporting resources like we'll cover here. So the accessibility to a practical handbook on accessible graphic design is by RGD and the government of Ontario, and it talks about font choices like kerning and things that you might not consider but are important for people with low vision, for example. Emojipedia, like I said before, so you can look up what the definitions or the descriptions of the emojis that you're using are there. And it's a really cool site. And then we have accessible publishing guides to image description. And that's just a great, if you're using images, we highly recommend that you describe them. So everyone has the same experience. To create the image descriptions for this presentation, I followed those guidelines, for example. And now for our last demonstration, let's listen to Patrick talk about described images at NNELS.
Hi, my name is Patrick. I'm an accessibility tester for NNELS, and I enjoy reading because a good book can teach me something new or transport me to a fantastic new world. As a blind person, I use a screen reader on my computer, phone, and other devices. While reading an ebook, a screen reader converts the text of the book into speech and/or braille. However, pictures can't be directly represented by either speech or braille. To convey what an image shows to people who can't see it, the author or publisher of a book can include a text description, which a screen reader will speak in place of the image. I love reading books from the NNELS repository because it offers ebooks which contain alternative descriptions for images. NNELS allows me to specifically search for ebooks featuring described images, which makes them easier to find. To do this, I can perform a search from the NNELS homepage.
National Network for Equitable Library Service NNELS. Search the catalog edit. Land. Enter. Search the catalog edit. NNELRIC. Enter. Search results. National 9 read.
the results load, I can locate the filters section of the page.
National Network for Equitable Library Service. The Canadian Accessible Library System. Search the NNELS collection. Request a title. Filters.
And under the filters section, there's the filter by accessibility
Certified
option.
accessible. Filter by accessibility.
And under this heading,
Described images 5 checkbox not checked.
is described images. So if I check this,
Space list with 5 items. Described images 5 checkbox checked.
the results will reload.
Same page link jump National Network for it.
And once we locate the results themselves,
Search results. Elric Stormbringer link.
I can browse through the titles, knowing that each title is certified as containing described images.
Elric of Melnibane another story link. Enter main region.
So I can select one,
Elric of Melnibane.
and from here, I can download it in accessible format with alternative text for images, and I can open it in an app such as Apple Books or Thorium, which is compatible with screen readers and supports the reading of alt text for images. I have now downloaded this book and opened it in Thorium Reader, and I'm about to encounter an image.
A battle scene. Two soldiers face off. Their swords and shields raised. One has a bat with outstretched wings on top of his helmet. The other wears a helmet with chainmail around his neck. Another soldier lies on the ground behind them. Graphic.
So because this image has been provided with an alternative description and my screen reader reads it, I know what the image shows, and I can be confident that I'm not missing any information or emotion or context or any other depictions. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.
Okay. So in summary, and this is kind of the same summary we have for each of them, but it's print disabilities just encompass such a broad range of people, which is why it's important to remember when interacting with library patrons. Patrons with print disabilities have diverse reading needs. They read different books in different formats on different devices at every age. So there's not a one-size-fits solution for your library. Serving people with print disabilities is like any reference or reader advisory interview. The conversation to find the best fit for the person at your desk. No one can ever have all the answers, but one of the best things about working in libraries is this huge network of professionals who can help, and hopefully that's where NNELS came in today and can come in for you in the future. So thank you so much for attending this webinar, the last in the series. If you have any questions, please contact support at NNELS or my personal email, meganselmer@bclibraries.coop.